Welcome everybody. Good that you're all here. Guess we have a great topic today. Social change through digital media, which is of course very exciting. And perhaps there are also a few people here just because we can, right? We're allowed to be here in this room together. We're allowed to have a drink afterwards, so stay for the drinks. And I think that's a good reason to be here in itself already. Warm welcome as well to the viewers at home, because we have a webcast again. And now, since there are people, for a long time ago, but now there are people already here in you as a crowd, so you can turn around and wave to the camera and say, hello, people at home. So you turn around and we all wave to the people at home. Hello, good that you are all watching us. And next time, join us. So that for that. Anybody here new for the first time, Digital Wednesday? Can you see some hands? Yeah? Good. Well, welcome. Very nice that you're here. I will explain the format to you, which is really easy. We've got 3 speakers. They each have 20 minutes. We have the clock over there counting down. And then we have 10 minutes for questions, discussion, etc., etc. No breaks. So we finish after 90 minutes, and then we head to the drinks all together and have a nice evening. Okay? As I said, the topic is really interesting and I guess very relevant too. Social change through digital media, digital design, technology. It's close to my heart as well. I was thinking yesterday while I was preparing, 10 years ago, I founded a Facebook marketing agency. And I was thinking to myself, would I do it again today? I was thinking, perhaps not. It doesn't feel very ethical, right? Facebook, because they have a lot of bad news, the whistleblower, stuff like that. On the other hand, we did some great work. We, for instance, for the Dutch Heart Foundation, we had a lot of volunteers that we found through Facebook. AEDs that we spread over the Netherlands through Facebook, I guess saved some lives indirectly, which is a good thing, right? So it's not a black and white issue. I guess you heard perhaps of Apple with the client-side scanning technology, right? That they had the intention of scanning your photos on your phone for child pornography, right? So they could report that to the police. Who of you would think that would be a good idea? Nobody? Who of you would think it's a bad idea? I guess that everybody. Could you say, perhaps you say, why would that be a bad idea?
It would be a horrible feeling if they would scan all my pictures. And you don't know what else they're using it for.
I guess that's the argument that they heard a lot. That's why they pulled back the initiative. But it's not a black and white topic, right? There's a lot of big spectrum in doing good. And I guess it's all about intention. And I see a lot of people in the industry, young talents, who want to do something good with their talents for the world. And today we have 3 speakers who are beyond the intention of doing good. They are already doing great stuff. And they're going to present and talk to you about that. So we have Bas Ploeg of animalvoice.io. We have Pieter-Jan Pieters of Owow, I have to say. I thought it was Owow, but it's Owow agency. And we have Jana van de Heuvel from Fashion for Good. And they're going to talk about their perspectives. I'm going to introduce the first speaker to you now, which is Bas Ploeg, as I said, from animalvoice.io. During Corona, Bas constructed a camper van and moved to Portugal for surfing when a friend called and he said, hey, Bas, you could use your talent for creating new camper vans, or we could do something great with technology and save some animals. Are you in? And he said, yes, I'm in. And he's going to talk to you about that right now, the things that he learned, the results that it gave. Give a warm welcome to Bas Ploeg.
Thank you, Rolf, and thanks everyone for coming up, and thanks organization for having me. Just gonna click through these. Yeah, so what I'm gonna talk about today is about an application that we built for WWF in the Netherlands from animalvoice.io. It's a company that I have with my partner. But first things first, I want to tell about a book rule that me and my brother had when we grew up, when we were young. And it was namely that whenever we found a book that we thought was interesting, we could have it. we could have it from our parents. And I think one of the first memories that I have was when I went to the Naturalis Museum in Leiden. And I saw a lot of dinosaurs, I saw a lot of animals. And one of the things that I found was this book. It was a book about the Galapagos Islands. And I can really remember that that kind of ignited for me an interest in animals, in wildlife, in nature, in evolution as well. So 25 years later, I just turned 30. You might think, oh, this guy's become a biologist or maybe become an animal ranger. Well, nothing of that is true. I work in tech. I also build camper vans, but most of my times I spent at Greenhouse, Group M, working in corporate innovation entrepreneurship, looking for internal startups to grow. But where do these two things come together? So on the one hand, I have wildlife really as one of my passions, and on the other hand, we have tech. And that's something I want to tell about today, and it's called animalvoice.io. So Ralph already mentioned it a little bit, so how did this all start? So last year, I got a call from Menno Zevenbergen. And he called me up, I was in France by then, and he said, listen up, I have an idea. Because Menno is also one of the guys that I know from Greenhouse. Every year he goes to Africa. He goes to an Africa trip. And this year, just before the COVID crisis started, he was in Gabon, in Africa. And on his first day there, he saw an elephant on the ground, dead. And he wasn't dead because it was a natural death. No, he was poached. So the tusks were away, and he was just killed, just for trade. He said, okay, listen up, Bas. I can come back home, I can donate €5 again a month, and all will be good, but I can do better than that. I have a technical background, we have the network, and I want to team up with you to use your experience in experience design to do something good in tech. So that's what we did. We teamed up, and we founded Animal Voice, and we're dedicated about wildlife and award-winning in voice and digital innovation. So two worlds came together. And we're on a mission, the two of us, is to educate families about wildlife diversity to assure our youngest generation will help to protect this beautiful planet. So we work with voice. It's also in the name, Animal Voice. But what are these actually? What is voice technology? What are voice assistants? What are voice applications? And who of you does have a smart speaker at home? I see a couple of hands. So for example, Google Home or maybe Amazon Echo, but you have the same technology also on your phone. It's a Google Assistant, for example, or maybe on your MacBook or on your iPhone, and then it's called Siri. So these voice assistants, they help you basically, they aid you with certain commands that you try to perform. So you could set an alarm, you can ask for the weather, you can ask some trivia questions like what the capital of France is or whatever, and they can give an answer. So these are voice assistants. So you can give a certain user input, for example, hey, Google, talk to Dutch Design Week. Then this voice assistant, so that's the speaker or your mobile phone, they can give back, for example, hey, here's Dutch Design Week. But then Dutch Design Week need to have a voice application. So this is basically an application, we call this a voice app, that we, as a company, build for organizations. And you can kind of compare it to a normal app in the App Store or maybe a website in a browser. And the voice assistants bring you to the voice app. And these voice technologies, so the Amazon Echo and Google Home, and you probably all heard about it, I think 5 years ago, made its introduction in the world. And it was going to change a lot of things back then. That was kind of the promise. But at a certain point you see that, and that's probably with all technologies that start, that after a certain point, after 5, 10, 15 years, they really find their niche. And I think the niche for voice is really wildlife education. It sounds a bit odd, and it sounds a bit fake, but here these two worlds really come together. Because after 5 years I've worked in the innovation lab, I worked with voice, Menno, my partner, is leading one of the voice teams in the Netherlands. We saw this. So within these voice technologies, we see that families with children are power users. About 500 million people worldwide use it, and in the Netherlands it's about 1 in 5 households, especially families with children who use these technologies through smart speakers or through their phones. And the cool thing is, they love to play games, they learn trivia, and listen to animal sounds. That's what they do. These are the top interactions that every research shows that most of these families with children do. So then we thought, okay, cool, we can do something with it. So we tried to build something to test and validate our assumptions. And this was kind of the first step, I think, in what have become Animal Voice. So we tested an app. So we built an app, which was called Animal Ranger. It's an interactive AI-powered voice app, And the goal is, as a player, to go through different kind of landscapes to become a qualified animal ranger. So you start the game, and through answering different kind of trivia questions, you can become a qualified animal ranger. So we launched it in the USA, and we have 150,000 users up to date, and almost 300 reviews. For so far the story, that's kind of like what we try to do with ourselves, just validating the really early phase in the evenings and the weekends. But then we thought, okay, we need a client, we need a dream client. Who can be our dream client to build something for? And it was, of course, WWF. So we called them up, we said, hey, we have an idea, we've tested our assumptions, we want to contribute, combining wildlife, combining tech, combining voice. Are you in? And they said yes. But why did they say yes? So just a little bit of a background, why were they interested in us? So they're always looking at new ways to educate and to engage their audience. So on the one hand, WWF really looks at the forest and the mangrove and the places where they're out there in the world. And the other way of preservation is also through education and through engagement. The second is that they really want to accelerate the digital transition. So in some things, they were really offline. For example, the Ranger magazines, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Some other magazines, the No Data magazines. And they also want to be present in the digital world. So that was the second reason why they said yes. And the third reason was really about innovation in a new channel. So this is really new for them. It's a new way to communicate with an audience in a way they haven't communicated before. So then the fun part started. So we could start concepting. We could start thinking, okay, what can we create for WWF that really target their audience, which is basically mostly the people between 3 and 12, so the children, that could really reach these goals. So we created a voice app with 3 different elements, and I'm going to show it later. So one of the things within the voice app was a Rangers quiz. I don't know if you know, but WWF has some iconic animals that you try to protect. And we created over 300 questions around these iconic animals for these children. And the Ranger quiz was really intended for people between 6 and 12. And it was really about educating them and engaging them. So really make them aware about the natural world and also teaching something about them, about this. And for the youngest bunch, these are the people between 3 and 6, so the really young children, we created all sorts of animal stories. And I said we created, actually they were created by some famous Dutch people like Umberto Tan, André Kuipers, Lieke van Lexmond, Tess Milne. They wrote all these quirky animal stories and they recorded it themselves as well. So that's the second thing that we did. And it's really about inspiration. These are really funny stories to inspire the youngest group. And the last one, what we made was a question of the day. The question of the day is a question that every day you could play, and it was different. So it was really relevant for that particular time and date. So last week, I think, previous month, there was a week of the plastic, month of the whale. So you could have really relevant questions. Also with Animal Day, you could have really relevant questions on the day itself. So now, the scary part, because I have a video, I hope it works. This is not mine. No. Maybe it does, after a while.
Hey Google. Hey Google. Hey Google, praat met...
Yeah, we don't have any... Yeah?
Click again, forward, backward.
Hey. Hey
Thanks, Tim.
Google. Hey Google. Hey Google, praat met het Wereld Natuurfonds.
Prima, hier is Wereld Natuurfonds.
Test vanaf nu wie de slimste ranger bij jou thuis is. Via de Google Home, Google Nest of Google Assistant op je telefoon.
Welkom bij Wereld Natuurfonds. Je kunt kiezen voor de Rangers Quiz, de wereldvraag van vandaag of de dierenverhaaltjes. Wat wil je doen?
De Rangers Quiz.
We gaan voor de Rangers Quiz. Hoeveel spelers doen er vandaag mee aan de quiz?
2.
1, 2, 3 of 4 spelers?
2.
Jullie zijn echte gezelschapsdieren. Speler 1, hier komt jouw vraag.
Een zeeschildpadvrouwtje blijft bij haar eieren totdat de kleintjes eruit komen. Waar of niet waar?
Niets waar.
Super, dat is het goede antwoord, 20 punten. Vlak nadat de eieren uit zijn gekomen, gaat mama zeeschildpad weer terug naar zee. De zeeschildpadbaby's moeten meteen voor zichzelf zorgen. Afrikaanse olifanten hebben grotere oren dan Aziatische olifanten. Waar of niet waar?
Waar?
Hele lange armen, een oranje vacht en hij leeft graag in de bossen. Over welk dier gaat deze beschrijving? De orang-oetan of de reuzenpanda?
Orang-oetan.
De winnaar is bekend. En dat is... de speler die de zeeschildpad heeft beschermd. Jij hebt 45 punten gehaald. Gefeliciteerd superbeschermer. Wil je nog een keer de Rangers quiz spelen, de wereldvraag van vandaag of de dierenverhaaltjes?
Dierenverhaaltjes.
Droom weg bij de grappigste dierenverhaaltjes, geschreven en voorgelezen door bijvoorbeeld Lieke van Lexmond, André Kuipers of Umberto Tan.
Welk dierenverhaaltje kies je? De pinguïn, de reuzenpanda of de luiaard?
De reuzenpanda.
Hier komt het verhaal. Wat moet je doen als een panda zijn ouders kwijt is? Verteld door Tess Milne.
Het is een prachtige dag. Je loopt door een groot bos in China. Opeens hoor je een piepend geluid. Wat is dat? Een slang? Iets met giftige tanden? Een gevaarlijk jungle monster.
Elke dag ontvang je weer een nieuwe vraag met de wereldvraag van vandaag. Dus praat met Wereld Natuurfonds en haal die prachtige dierenwereld in je huis.
Doei!
Cool. So for me, this is kind of what we do it for. So you see the children interacting with technology and learning, getting inspired and getting engaged from a young age onward. And I promised it to make it not too technical, but to look a bit like how did we make it? Like how do we create it, basically? So you first start with a conversational design. So for example, if me and Rolf or with any of you, if we are at the bar and we have a conversation, then I say something, you say something, we say something back, and we have to choose our words carefully, right? And we want to have a communication, we want to have a dialogue. And that is something that we first designed together with WWF to make sure, understand that these children, which they communicate with, so we work together with our education team, it's the right kind of conversation that we have with them. So we first kind of like set out the whole conversation. How does it work? What are the potential options? So second, then we kind of have a dry conversation, but you want to make it a real experience. So we've added all sorts of animal sounds, audios, UX sounds, but also animal images. And together with the education and biology team, we created all these questions to really make it an experience. Then thirdly, super important, if you ever want to build anything technical, is to test. And I think I kind of have a funny story about what we've learned during testing. So during testing, there was one question that we asked, whether they want to have a question about the zeeschildpad, so a turtle, or a shark, which is a hai. And every time that question was asked, the whole thing crashed, and we didn't really know why. But Google has certain things, or well, the voice application, if you say stop, it needs to stop. It needs to kind of overrule the rules. And the same thing goes for shark. If you say shark in Dutch, what is shark in Dutch? Hi. So then Google said, oh, hello, and then it all crashed. When we said rhino in Dutch is a rhino? Neushoorn, he thought we said Play Store, so we went to the Play Store. So we had to fix these kind of things before we could really implement it. And this is actually a loop. So every time now we're adding this week we're adding the koala, and we're going to add new forms of content as well that we need to test, implement in the voice app. So it's also work in progress, and we're constantly adding new content. But this was also an interesting part. Then, and this often is with new technologies, because then, okay, you build such a voice app, but now what? Because, I mean, if you look at the internet, for example, and if you look at some websites 20 years ago, every company, literally every company, communicated that they had a website. So if you said, for example, Digital Wednesday, they would say, okay, we also have a website, go to Digital Wednesday.nl. But now these days, every company, every brand, everyone has a website. You don't need to communicate it anymore because they're there already. And the same thing happens now with voice apps. It's still a young technology, voice technology. So we really needed to build this awareness and need to know, let people know how they could find it and how they could interact with it. So we use the magazines, so the Donator magazine and also the Rangers magazine, social activation through Facebook, also through mail. This was a really important one, so we also created a landing page, so a website, also with frequently asked questions. People had questions about the experience or also about data, privacy, and lastly also a bit of press. So this one was on Immers, so also showing to the world that we're making this. Okay, only have a couple minutes left. So looking at what did we actually have, what are our results, and can we be proud of those results? And personally, I'm already super proud of these results, but we only are live for the last 3 months, and we already reached more than 10,000 families using voice technology. And during these interactions, we have more than 80,000, basically 80,000 messages, interaction points made. And the cool thing is as well, is the level of engagement, the length that we are interacting with children on wildlife education. So this is on average 4.5 minutes. And we average around 6 wildlife learning moments per user. So you can imagine if you play the Rangers quiz, you can play with your whole family, up to 4 people in this case. And if you play with 2 people, you have 3 rounds, you already have 6 learning moments. If you play with 3 people, 3 rounds, you have 9 learning moments. So that's kind of the way we now are quantifying it. Okay, how can we contribute to wildlife education? And lastly, I know I started with a story about the book of the Galapagos Islands, and I think it's a good way to close that way as well. Because in that book, when I found the book, I found my presentation. This was my presentation when I was 6. It was the very first presentation I gave in groep 3, so in was it first grade, I think. And I wanted to close with 2 sentences that I wrote down in that book. It is in Dutch. I've translated to English, and it says, "The animals and plants of the Galapagos Islands come first place, and the tourists come second." Thank you.
Thank you, Bas. That's really nice that you are already a ranger at that young age, right?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. Any questions from people here in the crowd? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. There are no stupid questions, so if you want to ask a question, go ahead. Was it that clear? Then I have a question for you, Bas.
All right.
A few questions actually. Do you think, because this is interesting, right? So you use voice technology to educate. What are, for you, other interesting fields that you could name for using the same kind of technology also to make a positive impact?
Yeah, I think I think in the field of education, so in the wild field of education for families, especially, I think voice technology can be a really big thing. So, for example, you can see it in learning languages. For example, that's one of the way of the interactions within voice. And I think bigger than that, so you also have conversational AI. So you look more at automating certain conversations. There are various interesting options as well. But I think for me, the sweet spot is in education. So all sorts of education. It can be language education, it can be cultural education, it can be country education. That's kind of where the sweet spot is for me.
And if you look at the technology, of course, people need to have access to that technology in order to be educated. What do you think? Because usually, the technology is in the hands of the people who are already, they've got the money and the time, etc., etc. So how could we make technology more accessible to more people so that they could benefit from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if we look at the technology that we see here, the voice technology, you can have it in a hardware smart speaker. So that's one of the things that you guys have. So it's a Google Home or maybe Amazon Echo. But you can also download the same technology on your phones, and then it's called Google Assistant. So I think mobile phones are quite widespread in that sense. So everyone with a smartphone, with the internet connection could do it, could play it. And we also see that a lot of people are actually playing it on mobile phones. So in that sense, it's kind of democratized among a lot of people. So you don't need to buy the hardware device per se to be able to experience this.
Okay. And it was interesting to know how did you find those influencers, those creators like André Kuipers to read those stories? Where did you get them from, actually?
Yeah. I think I have to be honest there as well. We were a bit lucky that they were already involved.
Oh, okay.
They were already involved to some extent, but they were also struggling, like what's the best medium also to send this through. And especially with these kind of technologies, it's really intimate. How and when can you listen 4 or 5 minutes to a story? What's the right way to do so? And we see that it often happens also before children go to bed, or maybe like quiet moments, then these stories are good moments. So the stories were already in the pipeline, they were already created, but we're actually now talking to others, creating more.
Interesting. Any questions from the... Yeah, there. No? Yeah, over here. Moment. I'll walk to you.
When talking about the application areas, I was wondering how complex can these conversations get? Like, can the assistant also understand like full sentences or maybe even multiple sentences? Because that would broaden the application area greatly.
Yeah, it does. It does. Like this is more the field of Menno, so that's my partner. But it's built within a conversational AI engine, basically. They can understand, for example, intent, what is someone trying to say. We can also teach the model, if you say yes as an answer, we can also say that it understands all right, okay, yes, all different kind of things. So it also adds to the complexity, which adds a bit of a wow factor as well to the experience, that you don't need to say the only exact word, but it can really become more of a natural conversation that you and me can have, that we can also understand more context. And that's the level where it is now. The other thing is that we really need to understand, and there the conversational design is important as well, is when is somebody going to talk? So you need to design your conversation in such a way that the other person is prompt to start talking, and not to start talking mid-sentence where you actually want to say something else still. So those are all things that I'd love to share more about. But we are at the point where we can have quite complex conversations, and it doesn't only need to be the answer that we hope that the other person give. Is the answer? Okay, cool.
Over here.
Do you know how many new members there are since the app launched, thanks to the app?
Yeah, for now it was, that's why it's still a bit premature. So we're live 3.5 months. And it's really focused on more branding, so on education, getting people known, so we don't convert it to new users. And that is something that we are looking into for the next year, maybe. I'm not sure if I can say this, but that's something that we're trying to explore now. Like, indeed, okay, can we also use this maybe to inspire people to become a ranger, for example? But for now, it's really one of the core features is to educate, to engage, to inspire youth and families to understand more about wildlife. Yeah.
One final question? Over here? Oh yeah, well, 2 final questions, I guess.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your insights in this whole process. I have one small one, because I need to know it for the second one. Yeah. Do you work for the WWF, or do they kind of fund you guys?
So we partner with them, but we have a license fee, basically. So they pay a small amount for us to have our hours covered. But if you compare it, in all honesty, to like the kind of amounts that people would ask, it's more of a, I don't know the English word, but it's kind of a fee, basically, to get us do this. So it covers our costs. That's basically what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering, because you gave some insight in why the WWF actually wanted this project. But I was wondering, how do you get a project for an organization like this? Like, if you have big organizations like this and you want to help out, like, how do you reach them, or how did they go for you guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's also a thing that we're super aware of, that this is kind of a niche. I mean, how many WWFs do you have, actually? So one of the other ones that are kind of struggling with similar issues, challenges, are zoos. So we've talked to a lot of zoos. They also, like a zoo, they also are in the field of education, and they really also need to transition to education. So not you only go there to see an animal, but also to educate and have the whole wildlife program going on. Second thing, what their challenge is as well, is that a zoo visit is often a one-off thing. So they have this one contact moment, and then for the rest of the year they don't. So what we've done with them is, this is more of a business question, more entrepreneurship question maybe, is to how do we reach out to them? Can be through different kind of ways, like WWF we have within our network, zoos we have within our network. We're also talking with some educational institutions. So this was more of like knowing people who know people, and then we get in touch, and there it started going. Yep.
Last one.
Yeah, I almost have the same question, but I was still wondering, are you expanding on this concept for other clients, or are you going to deliver them the same service, or is it different per client?
Yeah, it's a good question. I said it's quite premature. Like, we launched this app 3 months ago, but we're talking to different countries as well within WWF, where in some cases it can be scaled quite easily because the content might be kind of similar, right? Because the questions, whether they need to be translated, or maybe like some of the stories can be translated to the local context. But I think if we talk about, for example, zoos or more the educational part, we need to reframe it. But I think the core, our mission will always be the same, that we're going to use these technologies to educate families about wildlife conservation. Yeah.
Thank you, Bas.
Thanks, guys.
Give him a big hand for Bas. And then we move to the second speaker of today, which is the founder and creative at Owow agency, Pieter-Jan Pieters. Pieter-Jan and Owow, they like to tackle wicked behavioral design problems. And one of these problems is gifting. How do you get people to give to charity? Right? Books have been written about that challenge. And what do? Do you tell more about the good cause? Do you show pitiful pictures of animals or children? Or are there other solutions that can move or nudge people to give to charity? And, well, Owow, in this case, they have a case where they did that. And Pieter-Jan is going to tell us all about it, the results that it gave, and how they approach this problem, which is going to be really interesting. So give a warm welcome and a big hand to Pieter-Jan.
Hello, 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 hello. Which one? This one? Yeah, this one. Yes, I got it. Thank you. Hey, merci, merci. I'm from Belgium, so I say merci. I'm Pieter-Jan, but our agency is located here in Eindhoven, so I speak a little bit of Dutch. We're an agency called Owow. I'm going to share 2 stories with you. The first story is about the charity. I don't have any results because it's not live yet, but it was so short notice and I thought it was a good topic, so I'm here to share it. And the next one is about mental health and the mental health inside of an agency. So how can you kind of put the triggers in place to keep people happy, to keep people healthy, especially in times of after COVID or pre-COVID. Quite heavy topic, so I try to keep it very light. In Dutch we say, I might jump from the hek op de tak, van de hak op de tak, because it's the first time I'm doing this presentation, but so I will look at the screen from time to time. Owow is short for the omnipresent world of WizKids. We're a group of about 35 designers, developers, and growth hackers working side by side to create remarkable digital products or solutions. I might share a few with you. And this group is led by these 2. This is me, and this is Robin, again, to keep it light. And the first story I want to share is a story about Klabu. Klabu is an organization. It's not my organization. It would be nice if it was my organization. But what they do is they build, what's their payoff again? So they build sport goods for the world to provide sport clubs in refugee camps. That's the payoff. And I think a year ago, I was introduced to Jan, and Jan was one of the founders of this organization. I went to Amsterdam with my then very pregnant wife, and I met him. Now I have a son, so I'm just a proud dad, so this is my son and this is me. Off topic, so back to Klabu. So Klabu is an organization that builds sport clubs in refugee camps. Super interesting, but they do it in a completely different way. So what they've done is they created a sport brand where they have clothing, they have goods, they have gloves, they have PlayStations or PlayStation sets. I'll come to that later. And the goal is, with those profits and donations, to build sport clubs in refugee camps. I can tell the whole story, but I might miss a few things. So I got a video of Jan that he sent me to explain the whole organization. And after this video, I'll explain what we did exactly.
The types of stories that I feel like I need to tell to the world is the story of resilience. We are here, we have stories, we are living the life that people are waiting to see.
We're people with dreams, we're people with goals, we're people who want something to achieve in life.
I'm sorry, Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
When you came here, we are the same. Every culture we accept. We are trying our best to make it a whole.
Through sport, we can tell people that I'm somebody like you. I want to be like Messi. I want to be like Cristiano Ronaldo.
When you come in sports, I can play with the Somalis, the Sudanese, the Burundians, Rwandans, Ethiopians, because we are together.
The most amazing thing for club is that it's open for everyone, especially the youth, and doing something that they love. And the community have so much hope in the club that it will change lives.
I think this gives a good image, I think, of what they do. So they build these kind of sport clubs in refugee camp. This one is in Kalubay. They're building a really big one in Bangladesh, where you have about 1 million refugees in one camp. And their goal is, of course, to bring kind of people together through sport, but also create kind of a sense of happiness, create good vibes in these camps, and create good things, good memories. Now, and this is where we came in. So what they needed was a system, kind of a stock management system in its core, that would give them the ability, if, let's say, a Nike donates 500 footballs to the camp, that they can use it, they can lend it out, they can easily kind of manage this whole thing, and they can follow up on what is going good and what is going bad. So what we've been doing for the past month is we've been building this little app, a stock management system, where they input all the goods, and the club managers, they can easily lend out stuff. So let's say somebody comes there, he becomes a member of this club, he gets a little wristband, he takes the phone, they link a football to it, and people know that this guy is playing with the football. In this way, they can kind of report if some goods are damaged, if the goods are going well, but also the amount of nationalities are actually, those are in those camps, and what stuff has been used and what stuff isn't being used. And I think this is where the interesting part comes now. Once you kind of have this management in place, it's very easy for them to kind of see what works well and what doesn't work well. And this is where this little behavioral science comes in. I met Ralph, by the way, on a course given by Sue Amsterdam. So this is some advertisement. They do it very well. And this is something which is called the influence framework. And what we've did is actually looked at how can we actually trigger people that are not part of Klabu or are not part of a good cause to kind of link them into or guide them into the world where they want to be part of a good cause. And how do you do it? I'm sorry, I'm going to turn my back to you, but otherwise I can't read it. Is kind of if the current behavior is they don't support Klabu, then you want them to a desired behavior, which is support Klabu. How do you do it? By focusing on, let's say, the pains that when they don't support it, they miss a purpose and they miss a good cause. But they don't have any personal connection to a cause, which is often the case. And the gains with the desired behavior, when the desired behavior is supporting Klabu, is that they want to feel part of a bigger purpose. They want to feel connected to a good cause. The other thing that we could do is tap into the habits. So the habits of the current behavior is they don't bother. But also because it's a brand that sells sports goods, you can also focus on the fact that now they buy shirts or sport goods at a Nike store, at an Adidas store. But these brands, they made the shopping experience so seamless that it's so easy for people to buy. But if they're on a website or a different site or shop where it's not easy to buy, a lot of people kind of drop off. So this is a problem that we can tackle in the digital field. But also in the desire behavior, the anxiety, why wouldn't I give money or why wouldn't I donate money to a good cause? And the question that people often ask is, where does my money go to? Is it being put to good use? And because we've built this little stock management system, we got kind of the insights and how people are actually using the goods that you donate. Now, Klabu has been doing kind of a lot of good stuff on it. What they do is they write interviews, they portrait people in those refugee camps as athletes, as powerful people, instead of showing pictures of hungry kids. They're hungry, but what their mission was, portrait them as powerful figures, so you feel connected, so you feel proud. If you donate, you're part of these people feeling proud. The other thing that they do really well is that they partner with bigger brands. So the shirts in the FIFA game, the football game, are Klabu shirts. The shirts that the people from PSG, I'm not a football fan, so it's very hard for me to know which team or which. So they partner with these big brands in order to have common goals. If they use those stuff, I want to have them too. And then we want to be part of this community. And then that's where the digital part comes in. Once we have, let's say, the stock management in place, we know how much people are actually lending stuff, who's using them, what nationalities. We can bring back that feed and give a super transparent inside look into how the camp is doing, what the data is, what's coming out. So if a brand donates, let's say, 1,000 shirts, 500 footballs, 10 TV screens, a Wi-Fi system, they can instantly see how it's being used, and we can monitor to see how we can improve it. So it's let's say, the most transparent you can be ever. And then the second thing that we're not doing now, of course it's all in development at the moment, is that Klabu promises that for every Klabu item you buy, you give 5 refugees access to sports in their club for 1 year. So the next step in this, let's say, little app is to make it public for everybody. So if you buy, let's say, in a very seamless way, a shirt, you instantly get connected to the whole system, and you see where your money is being used, where your good stuff is being used, and how Klabu is doing and what Klabu is doing to kind of make those people feel better, give them a better life, but also show the stories on how they're doing, and kind of give a very personal connection between you and the cause and the people that you're actually impacting. That's the first story. The second story is a little bit different. They're vaguely connected because it's all a little bit about bringing happiness and joy, but it's more about, let's say, our internal organization. So I've been running Owow with Robin for a while now, and we've been always very much focused on happiness, physical health, mental health, being good to our people, and actually feeling proud of what we've built. We have a few things that we've always kind of used, and especially now after COVID, and talking to a lot of other agency or company owners, we see that we did something right, and I want to share it with you because I've been sharing it for a while now. I've got 5 things. The first thing I want to share you is, I've called it now position switch. But it means that if somebody in our organization isn't happy, we instantly kind of take action. If somebody's feeling stressed, we instantly take action and make sure that he doesn't feel stressed. If somebody doesn't like a project, we instantly switch so he goes to a project that he likes. The thing is that his team will cover for him. So our team doesn't take advantage of it. It's something that you only do if you're really stressed, if you're really at the limit. But it also makes sure that you're as a team. You always feel backed up. You always feel like you're part of a bigger picture and a bigger purpose. The second one, it's a mental game. For the past year, we've been working with a coach, a mental coach called Anne van der Giessen, a great lady who trains our team mentally since 2 years now. In the beginning, it was all kind of struggling. How do we get this to work? And do people want to share stuff? And do we believe it? But it's been proven that it works really well. I think what we offer, or what Anna offers to our team, is that everybody with an issue, there's therapy sessions, there's talks, there's messaging, there's meetings, everything we provide to make our team feel good, feel healthy, feel mentally healthy, and feel fit. Robin and Mia sessions with her as well. this is how it would look like. And the third thing is the feel-good game. The feel-good game, I mean, we have the mental aspect covered, but we also have the physical aspect covered. We have a physical coach that trains the whole team in kind of feeling better, feeling good, doing sports or not doing sports, eating healthy, meditating, which means that the whole team is kind of fit. If part of the team does it, it creates a culture where all the new people that join kind of feel together, make them feel good and make them feel healthy. Again, it's all about the healthy, it's the mental game, it's the physical game. And the fourth, or I think it's the fifth, the fourth, I lost count, is the be honest and be transparent. Every 2 quarters, we're trying to do it every quarter now, we have internal sessions where we have personal talks with every member of our team to talk about 5 questions. I've written down the questions that go like, okay, what are you doing great in your role as Owow? What could you improve within your role as Owow? And what are you doing well in the company, or what could we improve as a company? How do you see yourself grow and evolve at Owow? And what can you, or what do we want to do skill-wise in the future? And this creates kind of a culture where everything is discussable. And the most honest replies, or the most honest replies and the most honest answers get out of these sessions, where we really feel and kind of an inside look on how it's going in the organization, but also how do people feel? How does our team feel? What is on their mind? And there's a lot of personal stuff which is also outside of the company, which triggers, let's say, stress or could trigger burnouts that we can kind of instantly spot and take care of. And then the last one is the happiness and the purpose game. Everybody wants to have a purpose. Everybody wants to have kind of a good thing going. That's why projects are Klabu are incredibly important for organizations as us to feel part of a bigger picture, to feel like we're doing good. But also in the happiness game, it's about celebrating successes, celebrating if something isn't good, celebrating if something went really good. If you do that, I think everything will be just fine. And the reason why I wanted to share is because I think over the past year, there's so much companies that I've seen with so much people on burnouts, so much people leaving, so much people feeling so tired. I think we've all came from a very heavy COVID, and I think we in the digital space are lucky to be in the right space, that there's so much work, but it also means there was a lot of stress on the team. And what we're trying to do is kind of bring this kind of happiness vibe, mental and physical good feeling vibe to the whole company, and hope we can share that more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Pieter-Jan. Any questions from the audience, perhaps? Yeah, over there. Hold on.
Well, thank you for your story, and I've got 2 questions because you had 2 stories. So I start with my first question about your first story.
Yeah.
How did you get to the pains and gains in your behavioral framework?
So we talked a lot with Jan about his experience. I think that was the main thing about his experience and his thoughts on how he struggled or how he had to encounter to get kind of people on board, how to have them buy clothes, and how to get sponsor actually on board.
Okay, thank you. And about your company,
Mm-hmm.
is your people really enjoying the physical workouts as well? Is everybody joining them, or how do you?
Maybe I forgot to tell that it's incredibly personal. So even the sessions are never in group. It might be a group session where some advice is given, but we give the tools to the team, but they can use it or they can't use it. So let's say if the physical coach comes to the office, there's people training for a marathon that he gives them advice, and there's people that are, especially in our space, are lacking on sleep because they stare at a computer screen the whole day. There's people that are feeling stressed, they get meditation advice. So it's all a very personal thing that people can use or they can't use, but it's never, let's say, pushed upon them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Not yet. I have a question from one agency founder to the other. Is that is then doing good also good money?
Not in the short run, but it's definitely in the long run. I think especially in the field that we're still a small company, so we're about 35 people. But even through COVID, we had nobody on a burnout. We had nobody taking a long leave of being sick. We had nobody kind of being completely, let's say, out of energy. And I think this has all been part of the fact that all these kind of triggers were in place, that all the help was proactively applied or offered, so to make people feel good. I think in the long run, I think people or companies or agencies might be suffering quite hard on the fact that so much people are leaving and so much people are feeling kind of down. So short term, no. Long term, yes, definitely.
Yes. Good. No questions yet? I have one question. Is that because you are doing these projects like Klabu? I know there's a lot of design and technology talent also in here, but also in Eindhoven region. What would your advice be to them if they are looking for more meaning and more purpose in their work?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, that's Robin, the guy from the bathtub. Yeah. I think look for it and don't stop looking for it. I think I had the chance to meet, for example, Jan for Klabu, but I had a lot of conversations previously with other, let's say, brands or causes that we would feel connected to. We did small stuff before, but I remember the first time when I spoke to Jan, there was an instant connection that we said, or that we as an O said, let's do this. It doesn't matter how much it would cost us, doesn't matter how long it would take, it just feels right. But it's also because this Klabu is it's very maybe design driven. They want to create a powerful brand. They want to portrait the people in the camps in a very powerful way. They want to don't be only dependent on sponsors, but they want a brand that is profitable enough to fund the camps that they have. So I felt really kind of connected in this way of being very proactively looking for your own kind of solution and trying a different way.
Yeah, no, I understand. Because I think it's something that Bas also mentioned, right? So somebody asked, I guess, how do you get your project running? You know, did WWF ask you, or did you go to WWF? No. So how do you connect to a network of people that know where to go with your idea? I guess that's an important one too.
Yeah, I think, but it's all. It might be also all personal network, but if you tell the story and what you're doing, I think a lot of times people reach out. And I think meeting Klabu was somebody that kind of linked us together, saying, I think you speak with this guy because you're doing stuff which is nice, but what they're doing is great. And if you connect them, I think you might have a joint purpose.
Yeah. So come to Digital Wednesday, talk to people, build your network,
voilà,
and get it going. Good. Thank you, Pieter-Jan.
Thank you.
And then we're on to our final speaker of today, Jana van der Bergen, which I announced as Jana van de Heuvel in the beginning, but it's a very big difference between a hill and a mountain. A mountain is far more impressive. So it's Jana van der Bergen, Innovation Associate at Fashion for Good. As you perhaps know, the fashion industry, 2/3 of the fashion items is created by fossil materials. Perhaps you've also seen the pictures of big mounts of clothing being destroyed just to keep the prices up. I think it's not a surprise that the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world, even more so than aviation and shipping. But there's hope, and there's hope on stage today in the form of Jana. And what Fashion for Good does, they make they connect fashion innovators to huge fashion brands, which he's going to talk about. But what they also do is to connect to consumers through their Sustainable Fashion Museum, which is in Amsterdam. It's absolutely worth a visit, but she'll tell us all about that. So give a warm welcome to Jana van der Bergen.
So thank you, Rolf. Thanks for the introduction, and nice everyone to see you in real life again. I think you already did a pretty good introduction, Rolf, but I'm indeed from Fashion for Good. And today I will tell you a bit more about what we do at Fashion for Good, and especially focusing on the work we do in the digital fashion space. And I know Rolf just touched upon it, but before this talk, did everyone hear of Fashion for Good before? One hand up. Oh, in the back. Perfect. Another person. And of you, do you also really know what we do, or is this like something new to you as well? Nice, nice drop of the museum indeed. So we also have a museum in Amsterdam, but I will tell you more about this later. So before we dive into it, I will give a bit of an introduction to what Fashion for Good is actually doing. So our big focus is finding innovations or new solutions that can make the fashion industry more sustainable. And these solutions can come from startups, from scale-ups, and sometimes even more established companies. And you might think still this is a bit vague. So going a bit deeper into this, our organization is structured around two pillars. One is industry-focused and one is more consumer-focused. So starting with our innovation platform, which is really the core of our business. Here we do a lot of research and a lot of scouting to find all the cool startups that we want to accelerate, that we want to see implemented widely in the fashion industry. So we do a lot of support with focusing, helping them focus, developing their business and also their technology. And besides this, like Ralph already said, the biggest thing that we can do for these startups is connecting them to the industry players that can really help them to get widely adopted in the fashion industry. So if you see here, these are all our partners. And as you can see, it's many different players. It's fashion brands like Chanel and Adidas, but we also have more manufacturers like Arvind and Wellspun, which may be less known to you, and some retailers as well. And it's very important that these big players are involved because they really offer the expertise and the industry knowledge that our startups and scale-ups need to be able to grow their business. So here you can see the entire fashion value chain. We scout startups at each stage of this fashion supply chain. So looking at raw materials first, we, for example, have Gali, and they grow cotton in the lab. Then we have in the processing, which is pre-treatment, dyeing and finishing, we have colorifics, and they bioengineer bacteria to produce natural dyes instead of making them from chemicals. Then we have cut, make, trim, which is a lot about zero waste manufacturing. We scout startups in retail and use, which is mostly circular business models. So rental platforms, re-commerce platforms, I think this is becoming a very big topic in the fashion industry as well. So many startups like Vinted popping up in this space or have been there for quite a while already. And then we also have end-of-use solutions like recycling. And most interesting, what we'll be speaking about today is digital fashion. So we have some overarching topics and they touch upon all the stages of the fashion supply chain. And today I will dive a bit further in the work that we do in the digital acceleration space. So over the past 2 years, I've done myself a lot of research in this space, interviewed many stakeholders, startups, brands, sometimes even the government, to ask, okay, what is this going to be like? And in the next 10 minutes, I will share a couple of my findings. And I will structure it around the fashion supply chain again. So at each stage of this fashion supply chain, I will try to tell you what cool innovations are there. And also just wanted to flag that I think the pandemic has been not so nice for many people, but if it has been good for one area of the fashion industry, and I think the entire industry, is digital transformation. 2 years ago, many of the startups I spoke were still very small, and now they are doing crazy cool things, and you see them everywhere. I think The Fabricant was also on stage here, digital-only fashion platform, and they also just won the Dutch Design Awards in the fashion category. So, back to the topic of my presentation. Starting with the design phase, what kind of digital innovations are here? So we here are mostly talking about that the entire fashion industry at the moment is moving from 2D to 3D design. This is great in many ways, especially if you think about the fact that in traditional manufacturing, samples sometimes got sent across the world 15 times before they actually decided on a final design. And now, if you have your designs in 3D, you can see the instant model, and buyers and manufacturers no longer need to see all these samples sending over the world. So I wanted to make this an interactive session. Also, I might have a little prize at the end of the session, so do your best, with some quiz questions. And the first one is, by how much do you think a company can cut down on physical samples when transforming from 2D to 3D throughout its entire supply chain? So for 30%, you can keep seated. For B, you put your hand in the air. And for C, you stand up. Give you a couple of seconds. And the answer is C, 70%. So many of you had that correct. Many prizes I have to share in a bit. But yeah, so transforming throughout your entire fashion supply chain from 2D to 3D can save up to 70% of the samples, and that's really a lot. And in the end, another really great thing about 3D design and the software that are at the moment being created is that they can offer instant feedback. Not just about the cost, not just about what it looks like, but eventually also on the sustainability of a garment. So if I am a designer and I'm designing in a certain software and I use 25 different materials, my software could give a pop-up, hey, we can't recycle this, change your design, or we would recommend using this. Again, using things like AI, for example. And one startup that we've been working with at Fashion for Good is Swatchbook. And they are a digital material library, and they have many cool features, and one of them is their mix feature, and it works as such. So if you are a designer, you pick a 3D model, then you select a material collection, and then you set some rules. This can be on costing, and eventually also on sustainability. And then the program starts mixing these ingredients and offers you all the many combinations that are possible. And if you swipe left or right, it's a bit like Tinder, then it also learns. And next time when you're designing, it's giving you the more right options immediately. And it's a great way for designers, without being fully immersed in sustainability, being able to design more sustainable products. And the next stage is merchandising and planning. Here we're mostly talking about the power of AI. So how can we make sure that we get better at trend forecasting, so we no longer produce all this random stuff that people don't want, but that we actually produce what consumers actually want? Of course, there is a challenge that we start producing better products and everyone starts buying more. So there is always a bit of a risk to the story, but if this is used in the right way, it can be really beneficial for the fashion industry. And if we move further down the supply chain, I find this one of the most exciting areas of what is happening at the moment. It's the digital fashion shows and virtual showrooms. And this is not just about replacing the physical experience. It's really creating this crazy world where anything can be a model and walk over the runway. And it makes it a lot more inclusive and sustainable at the same time. I know you've been sitting already for an hour, so let's do another question. How much do fashion buyers and designers contribute to the fashion industry's yearly CO2 emissions by attending fashion weeks in New York, London, Paris, and Milan? We have A, 123,000 tons, B, 241,000 tons, and C, 506,000 tons. A is again seated, 2 hand up, 3 stand up. It's actually B. I know, I was thinking I'm always going to make it the highest answer, and I was like, okay, no, that's too easy. So it's still very high. Just as a reference, this is enough energy and CO2 to light up Times Square for 58 years. And that's just 1 year of fashion shows. It's not even counting the models and other people that are there. It's just the buyers and the sellers. So just a little sphere impression. This is what some new digital fashion shows are looking like at the moment. You have Digital Village and Big Things, which is fully in VR, MR, and you also have Beam, and they work with AR. So they video or they film models in front of a green screen, and if we wanted, we could let them walk here on our phones. We would see them. That said, I just said there is a big opportunity to be more sustainable with these digital fashion shows. We shouldn't underestimate how much energy it costs to create these fully immersive experiences. So at the moment, a lot of research is being done in this space as well, especially how much it costs to run all the servers to host these experiences. It's looking good, the research I have seen, but it's still something we should remain critical of. Then already the next stage is sourcing and production. And I think the biggest opportunity in this space is on-demand manufacturing, which basically means that we will only produce a garment once a consumer has seen, often the 3D model, and also has approved that they will buy it if it gets produced. So it's not produced before the consumer has said, I will buy this garment. And actually, legally, they can also not go back anymore in often of the cases. And of course, this can reduce overstock altogether. Another very cool startup that we work with in this space is Unspun. They create custom-built jeans based on consumers' personal body scan and 3D fitting software. So this is the only pair of pants people have been wearing, I think, or jeans they have been wearing during the pandemic. They fit like a glove, so we'll definitely check them out if you need a new pair of sustainable jeans. Then we're already at the last stage of this supply chain, which is consumer engagement. And I think you might be all aware already, there are many technologies in this space that are making buying things, living things more interesting. Thinking about AI fit and style advisors, we have live selling, we have shopping in MR, we have also the digital-only fashion from the Fabricant, many interesting technologies. Again, there is the risk we shouldn't engage consumers too much, so they start buying more. But at the moment, as it looks like, especially these digital fit technologies and also better understanding your consumer can really help to reduce overconsumption and also overproduction. Again, another really interesting startup in this space, part of our current batch, is NMXR. They are a web VR startup. So what they do here, it's a collaboration with Pangaea. You might know them. It's a brand that arose during COVID as well. And what they do here is that a consumer, if they wanted to buy this jacket, which is made with more sustainable technologies, they had to go into this web VR space through their computer or phone, and they could walk through the Antarctics, and they had to gather kind of color codes, and for every color they could learn about how this garment was made more sustainably. So it really makes a consumer think of what am I actually buying, how is it made, for example. I think people spent like 4 minutes on going through the Antarctics before they actually bought the garment. And I think it's a great way that shows of how digital technology can help us to better educate consumers on what they buy and make them really think before they start buying. Again, I already touched upon them. The Fabricant in the corner there. As I said, they just won the Dutch Design Awards, really cool. For the ones that don't know them, they make only garments that will only ever exist in the digital space. So they are never meant to become physical. And the team is very impact driven. So they decided to do a study to find out what is actually the difference in CO2 emissions between creating a physical garment and creating a digital garment. So you can imagine what's happening next. Again, how much do you think a digital garment causes or emits less CO2? Is that 77% remain seated, 87% you can put your hands in the air, and 97% you can stand up. half, it is 97%. Which is crazy, I think. Of course, this doesn't include hosting the garments in like digital worlds, but it does show that it would be a very quick win if we just all started living in the metaverse and don't wear physical clothes anymore. I think that's a while out still, so a bit to wait, and I think it's always going to be a hybrid between these two worlds, but it is a great future number that we are looking at. This was a very brief snapshot, and I realized this was a lot of information in, I think, like 10 minutes. So I also wrote an article about this, every supply chain stage and the startups that you can find in them. So if you're interested in reading about it, you can find it on our Medium page or on the Fashion for Good website. And in the beginning, I also told you that Fashion for Good has both an industry-facing side, which I just talked about, and a consumer-facing side. So writing these articles that we share with the industry is one way for us to also educate consumers, but we have many other things. And one of them is our Fashion for Good museum. It's a museum in the middle of Amsterdam, which teaches you everything about how fashion is at the moment, how it was in the past and in the future. It's also fully interactive. And it's the first one that is solely dedicated to sustainable fashion. So, as I already just mentioned, the museum is organized around 3 floors. In the basement, we have the past of the fashion industry. So here you can really see how the fashion industry became as wasteful as it is today. Then on the ground floor, we have what what sustainable fashion is all about now. And I know at the moment there's quite the belief that sustainable fashion is not really cool, it's not really sexy, or it's very expensive. And here we show also some brands in our good shop that really disprove this. And then, one back. The top floor, personally my favorite floor. This is where we showcase more than 50 of the innovators we have worked with in Fashion for Good programs. So like I think already mentioned before, we have scouted over 2,500 of them at this point, and over 130 have been through our accelerator and scaling program, and 50 are showcased upstairs, so you can see a lot of artifacts and also how their technologies exactly work. Then, to make it digital media, connecting these 3 floors is a good fashion journey. So when you enter our building, you get an RFID bracelet, and with this bracelet, you collect all kinds of badges and commitments. And when you leave the space, you get an action plan. So we really want you to first get inspired when you get in, and then we want to give you some tools to change your daily fashion behavior as well. And then to end off with, it's already kind of exposed there, but I think you all did a very great job, so I would love to invite you to our museum. A free ticket you can get on our website with this code, so hope to see you all there, FFGXDDW. And we also have a really cool new expo coming up next week with some really cool designers like Iris van Herpen. They use some of the most new biomaterials out there, like orange waste and leather made from mycelium, and they're exhibiting there as well. So with that note, I would like to end off and open it up to any questions you may have.
Well, thank you. What a great story, and what a great job you have.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah. How did you get into Fashion for Good? Into the company?
Yeah, so I used to work at a fashion brand, just a traditional one, which in the sustainability team as well, which is really great. But at some point I was like, okay, I want to focus more on innovation. And then I think, like many industries, the sustainable fashion industry is also a bit like everyone knows each other. So then I moved to Fashion for Good.
Nice, really good. Questions? Yeah, quite a few hands. I'm going to start here first, sir.
You were saying that the fashion industry is responsible for a lot of CO2, eh?
Yeah.
The European Union wants to reduce CO2, eh? What would be your advice to the EU to to accelerate the fashion industry to reduce the CO2?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question. I think there are like many EU initiatives already working on it, like the Green Deal. It's a lot about transparency, for example. So on food, I think it's a bit of a front runner of the fashion industry, like we've seen. You now have labels on food, and I think this will slowly also become mandatory on fashion products. And besides this, I think the carbon tax, as the fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters. As soon as we put this carbon tax on things, I think it can get way more sustainable as well.
Isn't it difficult to really change a mindset? Because what I can imagine a lot of big brands do is that they just do both, where it's maybe less sustainable because they're like, oh, we do a real fashion show, but we also do the digital one. Kind of like Coca-Cola reducing sugar with Cola Light. Where it's
good question. Fully understand what you mean, and also, even though I'm in the fashion industry, I think I can still say that, but they're quite outdated, and they are not the first movers ever when you look at automotive industry or like even the food industry, like I just mentioned. So it is difficult. So sometimes you see it just not. Sometimes the option doesn't always need to be only the most sustainable option, but should also be like the most engaging option. There should be something extra to the fact that it's just more the sustainable option. And in terms of mindset changes, I think I've been with Fashion for Good for 2.5 years, and the amount of change I've already seen in people's mindset is very great, both on the industry side, so the brands, could be also because of increased pressure from consumers and from the government, but also like I think younger people are starting to work at these companies and forcing basically also the older generations to change. And also on the consumer-facing side, Fashion for Good is very active on social media, and we see that that's growing exponentially every day as well.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm sure you are looking into stuff like NFTs and digital clothing, but there's a lot of discussion about these being very polluting as well. So I was interested in what's your view on the future of NFTs in the field of fashion?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's mostly NFTs, crypto, anything basically on those blockchains. The biggest issue is the verification, of course, that needs to happen now decentralized. And to my knowledge, I'm not an expert in this, but there are some, like Ethereum and other blockchains are working on reducing this so that not everyone needs to verify and that they can pass by that technology. And for now, I think, like with many technologies and new things that start, in the beginning you always have these challenges that you need to overcome. And I think this is something that they could overcome, but it is a very legit point. Like, we should not be thinking, okay, let's make everything an NFT, because I do truly believe that NFTs will be there still in the future, and it's not just a hype at this moment, but it is something to take care of, that's for sure.
Any other questions over here?
Most of the time, sustainable clothing is pretty pricey. How can you make it affordable to the ones with a lower income?
Yeah, that's indeed definitely something that is still the case. That is also why we have our good shop in our museum. So there we showcase garments that are actually of relatively cheaper. Sometimes they're also still quite expensive, but that's often also when they're just really cool. And the other way, at least for myself, how I've been doing it is you don't always need to buy new clothes to be more sustainable. So looking at renting your clothes or looking at buying secondhand or sharing clothes with your friends, I think is a very great step until these garments get a bit cheaper or like most of them get like the same prices that we have right now to work in it that way. However, I also believe some more expensive sustainable garments have this higher price because they actually pay everyone in the supply chain a more fairer wage. And I think also a lot of people, if they know that if my garment is more expensive because it goes to actually the people that make my garments, that they're willing to pay a higher price as well.
I was wondering whether Fashion for Good was also focusing on fair fashion, because you have talked about sustainable fashion, but what about fair fashion? Because that's also a subject in the industry that's also being discussed about how the workers are being paid or what the work environments are. So is that also something that you guys are discussing and wondering like how can we improve on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was indeed not on the slide with the overview, but we also have a topic which is called social innovation. However, it is a very difficult topic because improving the wages, for example, and the working conditions of workers in the fashion supply chain is often about collaboration and not so much about innovation. Like we all need to agree that you have some accords, but they are not legally binding, to have like regulations that force us to actually pay the people in our supply chain a living wage. And I think that is happening. I think in Germany, in the Netherlands, they're now also starting to get this in, which I think is a very good development. And for the rest, we are working with transparency and traceability technologies. So at some point, if you're able to track a garment from basically the cotton field to the consumer hands, we're also better able to know who has touched this garment and how can we make sure that a fair amount of money goes to them. Good question, though.
There's a question here in the back. I'm just moving there slowly.
Thank you. Well, Fashion for Good sounds like a very very nice platform, and I was wondering, do you know any similar platforms in other industries, or do you think this could be exported to other industries?
Yeah, very good question. And we actually just talked about it over dinner as well. I think Fashion for Good, of course, we have an accelerator program, and in many different industries, in health, in basically food, you have these accelerators, but they really focus on finding these startups, maybe connecting them to the brands, and then they let them go a bit, or they invest in them. And I think Fashion for Good is truly unique. First of all, because we also have this consumer-facing side, but also because we focus on long-term relationships. Like the innovators are in our program for a year, but after them, they become part of our alumni network, and we still keep helping them if they have requests. And I think that is truly different to us as well. Like we don't have projects of 3 months, it's really 1 year to 2 years, sometimes even 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, you also very briefly mentioned trend forecasting through AI. How would you, I don't know how much you know about this as well, but how would you predict something as seemingly random as trends or fashion trends, especially like micro trends?
It's a very good question. I'm also not an expert in AI, so I wouldn't know exactly how they do it. What I've heard, the data input that they have is often social media, mediums like WGSN. They use it as input, but they also use a lot of historical data from the brand itself. So as brands, if we're moving through this digital transformation, it's very important for them also to get their data in order. Because if they have their data in order, they can use their historical data also better to predict the future.
Any questions left? Yeah, over here. I go back, no problem.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about the collaboration with these big companies, because we often see these big companies as doing the usual stuff and sometimes doing these kind of projects on the side to show, yeah, we're green or yeah, we're fair. How do you kind of make sure that in the end, the things that you kind of want to implement in these companies or these kind of mindsets are actually being, activated, or at least that they're being practiced in that way?
Yeah, very good question. And it's something that for us already starts with the selection process of our brand and manufacturing partners. So not just anyone can become part of our platforms as one of those corporate partners on that slide. You need to truly show that you are committed to changing the fashion industry and the way you work in. And again, it comes to the fact that with Fashion for Good, it's not just these short processes. We also say that our goal is to find and implement these solutions. So we're not looking for one-off pilot projects for a capsule collection, but what we do, it's often like one pilot project, and it's very clearly outlined what that is going to look like in full-scale implementation, to make sure that there is always this bridge from just a small pilot to full-scale implementation.
Thank you. One room for one more question, or not? Then we are going to close down. I have a question because Fabricant won the Dutch Design Award. Now you see a lot of those initiatives. What will win the next Dutch Design Award in fashion, in your opinion?
Oh, very difficult question. I think perhaps, I don't know if it's still fashion then, but, and I know the Fabricant is also working on this, but the focus of this time was just on the clothes, but seeing how these clothes merge into the environment and how actually combining a bit like what the Fabricant does with NMXR, the ones I showed. So actually showing through your garment the sustainability story of an item, I think, would be something that deserves the next design award.
I thought it was an amazing case that you showed. Yeah, thank you, Jana.
Thank you. Bye.
And with that, we reach the end of our session of today. Did you enjoy yourself? Was it insightful? Insightful enough? Good, good. So for the people at home, next up, come over here because it's really, really insightful and fun to be here. First of all, I want to thank a few people before we go to the drinks. Of course, the people from Open Webcast who are facilitating the webcast, organization of Dutch Design Week, and of course our sponsors over here in the back. Very important to make this all possible, to make this a free event that we can all enjoy, which is good news. The next Digital Wednesday will be in 2022. There's no subject yet, so keep our socials in the eye, and I will tell you all about that as soon as they're coming up. So this was the last one of this year. Well, we're going to make sure that 2022 will be great. And finally, before that we go to the drinks, there are two very interesting interactive installations over there, which one of them already bridges sort of like the story of Bas and the story of Jana, because it's an AI-powered conversational system that will guide you in the world of fashion, which is interesting. So if you're tired of talking to somebody or just really interested, go and enjoy those installations because they're there for that, and there are people there who can tell you all about it. So that's going to be fun too. With that, I think we are done, right? So thank you very much for being here and your questions and your enthusiasm. And see you at the drinks. Thanks.